Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're in the Ayin. We're in Parshat Tazria. When we started this year, right before or right around the yard site of the Ayin, of Avram Dov and Rab David Miavarich, we learned it as to take upon ourselves to be able to access the wonderful skula that's associated with learning from the Sefer. Besides the point that it's tremendous chidushim on its own right. And we also took upon ourselves another shir, the Ben Ashri, for the same inyanim. Both of these great tzaddikim did not have children, and this is in a way that helps them in the olam emes. And we took it upon ourselves. And recently somebody reached out to me and said that he took upon himself to learn from the Svarim. He needed the Yeshua and a few different inyanim, and he wanted to let me know that Baruch Hashem, he received the Yeshua in some ways, he told me. And it gave me tremendous chizik, and he wanted me to pass it to all of us that we should be mechazik. It's not easy to learn in general, especially when a person is going through a difficult time, but to be mechazik ourselves, to continue to learn from the Svarim and learn from different Svarim. Whenever you learn, especially when you learn for a tzaddik, especially if they didn't have children, there was nothing for them now to be Mail in Gan Eden, they take it upon themselves to be Melitz Yosha for us. And I wanted to pass it on. So as we begin in Parshat Tazria, the first pasuk, Vaydaber Hashem Moshe Ishiki Tazria v'Yod Zachar v'Tamish Yom B'Mei Nida Dovsa Titma. So before we begin the piece, we just have to give a little bit of a background. We know that when an Isha sees Dam, she becomes Tamei Nida. In addition, when she has a child, she also becomes Tamei. There's different time if she has a boy, and there's different time that she's Tamei if she has a girl. So the pasuk says that if she has a boy, she's tamei for 7 days. Today we're much more strict. Today the tumah lasts much longer. The dam nida today, since we're not experts in dam nida, in dam ziva, in dam leda, so all damim are tamei. And an isha, if she has a girl, she is tamei for 2 weeks. Now is not the time to discuss why by a zachar it's 7 days and why by a nekeva it's 14 days, but that's the halacha. Today, like I mentioned before, we're much stricter, and any dam that an isha sees from the time of her birth until she stops seeing dam and then counts 7 clean days is considered dam nida, and she's always tamei. The Ayin is going to learn from this tremendous hashkafa how a person should look when he's facing a tremendous nisayon. It's not easy. And this is not in any way to downplay any nisyanis, chas v'shalom. Everybody has difficulties in life, each person according to their level. But at least we should try to say what is the outlook that we should have while we're dealing with the nisayon, and how to, at least in some way, make it a little lighter. So yesh l'daktik sh'l'chayre tevas titma u'miyuter. That the word titma is extra, because the pasuk already tells us that when a isha gives birth to a zachar, she's tamei for 7 days. So why did the pasuk have to repeat again that she's like a nida who's tamei? Ulahaven ze al derech hamusar. Api di isa b'zayar kodesh, ama di chashucha, an ama that's dark, mahapchin l'nahira. Ama di chashucha, says the Zohar, mahapchin l'nahira. Hine iker shashua the Kadosh Baruch Hu, an unbelievable lashon that the Ayin says the great delight, the main delight that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has b'tzadikim. Shemahapchid midas adin lemidas arachman. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is happy when tzaddikim are mahapich din on somebody and turn it to rachman. When you go to a tzaddik and you ask him to daven, and you ask him for a bracha, and you ask him for advice, and the tzaddik takes out a tehillim and he davens and he gives you a bracha and he gives you advice, and a person is zoicha to Yeshua, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has tremendous delight in that. We're going to see why in a second. Hainu. Why? Because in every din that tzaddik recognizes that ultimately there's a benefit, a chesed to the individual. Now we don't see it, obviously, and we don't understand it, but many times after the fact we can say, you know what, this was actually the best thing that happened to me. It's very hard to go through it b'shas ma'isa, and a person goes through nisyonis in life and doesn't always see it, but many times the person says, you know what, this made me a stronger person, and it made me do other things, and it made me recognize that I have to fix my ways. And how do they see that in every din there's chesed? So the Ayin now brings down one of the main fundamental inyanim of the Baal Shem Tov's teachings. The Baal Shem Tov taught, and this is also brought down at Kabbalah and other, even in the non-Hasidic world, this is also understood. Shemaminim b'Hashem, that when a person understands that in the din there's really rachamim, and that really ultimately everything is l'toivasi, when a person, and it's all from Hashem, the Baal Shem Tov taught us that as soon as a person recognizes that, he's already mahapich the din to chesed. Now, it doesn't necessarily happen in an instant, right? It could be that there's certain things that Hashem still wants from us. But the Baal Shem Tov taught us that is one of the main reasons of nisyonis. And when a person is mechazik in emunah and mechazik in betachon and says, I know Hashem, this is from you, he understands that, and you want this ultimately for my benefit. The person understands that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends him in the Zion, it's that he should straighten up his ways, he should do tshuva. Whether it's a material problem, health, finances, children, or even in ruchnius, that he sees he cannot grow in his avodah, he's having a hard time davening, he's having a hard time putting on tefillin, he's having a hard time learning, he's having a hard time being shomer Torah mitzvahs, right? When a person understands that this is all for my benefit, it's very hard at the moment, but a person is mechazik himself, and he says, this is all for my benefit, and I have to be mefashish in my maisim, and I go to a tzaddik and I ask a Rav, and I ask a Adam Gadol, what can I do? What Kabbalahs do I take upon myself in order to improve the situation? When a person does that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Zohar says on the Ayin, the Ayin explains the Zohar, that this is the Iker Shashua, this is the Iker delight that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has in tzaddikim. Ki gam bechinas din, bechinas gvura, dinim, and gvura is bechinas small, right? Dinim, gvura, and small is all the same explanation. Nichlal boy bechinas chesed. In it is chesed. As the Ayin explains, K'd'isa hi or the yamina, the Zohar says there's light, that's the right, which is chesed, v'hi the smaller, and there's light in the left, which means shegam bechinas small, bechinas gevura nichra, bechinas or, bechinas chesed. That even what's described by the Zohar, the concept of small, which is gevura, which is dinim, right, is also chesed. Bechinas chesed, the chesed that's there, it's covered, you don't see it. When a person has a tzara, he doesn't see the chesed there because it's covered by the tzara. But if you look at the word small, says the Ayin, in it is the name of Hashem, Aleph Lamed. And that is a hint that there's Hashem in there. Everything in the world, as we've learned many times, has Hashem inside. Because without it, it couldn't exist. So even a tzara, even a din, even a makkah, within it, there's some sort of chesed. And when we understand it, it makes it much easier and much lighter. This is what the Baal Shem Tov taught us, and this is what the Baal Shem is coming to teach us. And this is what Hashem wants us to understand. That a person should believe that this Torah is really the ultimate good. And through that he raises up din, and he turns it into chesed. Yodai ksiv, hands, the boy la rama yamin asmalo, that he has to lift, a kohen has to lift his right hand a little bit above the left hand, because the right hand signifies chesed. So chesed has to overcome the gvura. And the Ayin, as he's done many times, as we learned many times, he learns from every pasuk an avodah. And what is this pasuk teaching us? That a kohen has to raise his right hand over the left hand, that a person has to raise the chesed from the din. Part of our job is to say, okay, I'm going through a terrible tzara, chas v'shalom, but in it is chesed. And when he drills down and he investigates and he sees the chesed to be very simple. Hashem was not happy with what I'm doing something I shouldn't be doing, or I'm not doing something I should be doing, and now I understand it. So now you're raising the chesed above the din. When you do that, that brings tremendous delight to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that actually solves the problem in some sort of way. It doesn't mean tomorrow the situation disappears, but that is the beginning to seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. This is a fundamental teaching of the Baal Shem Tov and Chassidus, and even in Kabbalah. Lo yimashikol ikar hayisurim, to tell a person that ikar yisurim Bechinas chesed. Ubezen hatzapich mitzor lechesed k'mayim rakos v'yi ba'alis mincha v'yigash Eliyahu Hanavi. Aneni, the hidei mincha, we know that in the afternoon is bechinas dinim. In the mazolus and the time that Hashem created the world, right? And every day there's different hours, there's different zmanim, there's different days of the week. Mincha time is always dinim, bechinas smola. Eliyahu Hanavi hu bechinas aschalta de gula, and Eliyahu Hanavi is like a remez, is a concept of the beginning of the gula, right? Eliyahu is always mavaser toiv, right? If a person, the Gemara says, sees Eliyahu Hanavi, he should know that he should be mitzapa for good news. So therefore, when it says, as it says, Hinei anoichi shalech lechem Eliyahu Hanavi, Pirsh vahi ba'alus mincha. And the Ayin says, when it says vahi ba'alus mincha, Pashup Pshat is that when mincha begins, the Ayin says, no, vahi ba'alus mincha, when I'm raising up the mincha, when I'm raising up the zman of dinim, and understanding that in it is chesed, right, which is what Eliyahu Hanavi does, then you're now nishapik b'chinas din, mashahoy betchila b'chinas tzora, which is b'chinas evel, right? Tzora, evel, din is all in the same category of problems. Nishapik v'nishapse liba. You change the word of evel to liba to heart, b'chinas chesed, who b'chinas geula shenigal me'atzora. So the Ayin teaches us a fundamental yisoid in Chassidus, even in Kabbalah, and even in the yeshivish world, which is, not so much involved in divrei Chassidus necessarily, but the concept is the more that a person strengthens his emunah and bitachon in Hashem, and understands that every tzara is an opportunity and lies in it chesed from Hashem. Whatever that chesed may be, that teaches the Bas Ayin is the beginning of the geula of getting out of the tzara. It doesn't happen tomorrow necessarily, but the point is that this outlook, this hischaskus in this concept helps us get through the tzara. That's why it says Rachmana Libaboy. Pirish Rachmana, right? Rachmana is always a reference to Hashem, but Rachmana also means Rachmanus. I know Hashem, Hamerachim, the Chofetz Chesed hu. Hashem wants to give Rachmanus and wants to do Chesed, which is Liba. Hainu Shehafchu Yisrael Liba, from Evel to Liba. Now this is the Inyan of the Negat, which we started a little bit in this week's Parsha, which is also next week's Parsha. There's a big connection between Tazria and Metzora. Now, the word Nega also has the words Oinig in it. When a person takes a Nega and is able to transform it into good, it now becomes Oinig. The Seir Nega, the here in the Nega is Tzaras, and depending on the here and the color, the coin will determine if a person has Tzaras or not. Now we're going to learn another fundamental Kabbalistic idea. I'm going to try to explain it to the best of my understanding or ability. Here in Kabbalah is a reference to dinim. Any here that a person has is a reference to some sort of din. Now, for example, before the Levian became Levian, they had to shave themselves from head to toe. That's what the Chumash teaches us. When a Metzora, part of his tshuva and his kapara process, he has to remove all the hair from his body. A Nazir, at the end of his Nazirs, removes all the hair from his body and they burn it in the Beis HaMikdash. The Denim represent Dinim. The hair, represents Dinim. Now, there is a question, what about the beard? The beard is usually always a Kabbalah. There's tremendous inyanim when a person grows a beard. That's a different topic, how to reconcile these two seemingly contradictions. But Seyar is Bechinas Dinim. And when a person has hair and it makes him tameh, he has din. And he has to go to the Kohen to help him. Now, Bechinas Din bon nega. That he turned the white. He took the lavon and he turned it into novel. The reason that an animal that's an avela is tameh is because it has no chiyas, it has no neshama, right? It was killed, right? And there's no chiyas anymore. And therefore, it's tameh. So when a person turns the lavon, which white is always an Indian of chesed, and turns it into novel, he becomes tameh. The zehu, and he has to fix it. How does he fix it? He has to go through the whole process, of a Metzora. He has to separate himself. He has to have the paraduma. He has to go to the mikvah. There's a whole avodah to become tahar. This is what the pasuk teaches us. When we learn that Kodesh Baruch Hu, we say by Yud Gimel Midas Arachamim, by Yavor Hashem Apanav, we say it by Slichus. What does this teach us? Malamich and Atif Kodesh Baruch Hu Keshliach Tzibur. That Kodesh Baruch Hu wrapped himself Kaviyochel like a Shliach Tzibur. Obviously Hashem doesn't do it. There's no physicality. It's for us to understand what's going on over here. Pirush Vayavor Gematria Chesed Gvura. Then what does Hashem do? We're going to learn the next few lines outside. When Kodesh Baruch Hu wants to bring Rachmim Klal Yisrael, Kodesh Baruch Hu Kav Yochel has to take the Chesed and the Din, put them together, right? How does he do that? Through the word Vayavor. And how does Kodesh Baruch Hu do that? When he puts the Chesed and the Gevurah together, right? And through our koiches, and we believe that Kodesh Baruch Hu is always doing Chesed, Kodesh Baruch Hu created the world that he accepts from us the Yud Gimel Midas Arachamim, and that by doing that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mislavin. He turns all of our various white. When we understand in Elul, right? Why do we keep on saying Vayavor Hashem Apanav Vayikra? Because Elul is a time of Rachman. As HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to take the Chesed and pull out the Rachman from it, and by doing that, we actually, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to take the Denim, pull out the Rachman from it, and by us doing that, through the Yud Gimel Midas, Kodesh Baruch Hu is able to turn all the gezeros that are upon us, Chas V'Shalom, and overcome it. And that's why we do tshuva. That's why we say slichas. That's why we say Yud Gimel Midas Arachim, says the Basayin. And this is hinted in these words of Vayavar Hashem Apanav. What does it mean? That Kodesh Baruch Hu takes the Chesed in the Gvura, and by us understanding that everything is from Hashem and it's really ultimately Chesed, that's why Kodesh Baruch Hu removes the dinim befrat before Rosh Hashanah, in order to give us a good Giventure. And this ties back to the Pasuk, which we started. So just to give a quick recap, the Pasuk says, Isha ki Tazria v'yolda zachar, Isha when she has a child, and it's a zachar, she's tummy for 7 days. The Ayin learns, as we're going to see in a second, that the fundamental principle of the Baal Shem Tov was to teach us that everything comes from Hashem. And everything that comes from Hashem is good. We're in a difficult situation. We're in a Metzora. We have Nisyonis. Part of our Voida, going through the Nisyon, is to understand that in this Nisyon, there's Chesed. Chesed could be we're doing Averis, we have to fix our ways. We're not doing what Hashem wants us to do, so we have to start doing good. Hashem wants us to be better. Sayin Ruchni, Sayin Gashmis. And by us doing that, we start the process of removing the Denim away from us and actually bring the Chesed up into us. And that's hinted, says the Basayin in the Pasuk, Isha ki Tazria v'yolda zachar. Ritzono loymar. Isha meramis lebchinas din. And Isha is meramis to din. Now, it doesn't mean that women are dinim, chas v'shalom. The concept of an Isha, which is a mekabel, is hinted to a din. Because tsaris suck out the neshama from a person, if you don't mind me saying it. So they are a mekabel. They're not a mashpia. Chesed is a mashpia. So the way that the Zohar explains Dinim, explains it in the concept of a mekabel. And in Zohar terminology, a mekabel is also known as an Isha. Not that a lady is chas v'shalom Dinim, but a lady, when she gets married, she receives from the husband because the husband is responsible to take care of the lady and her children. So she is called a mekabel. And therefore it says over here, Isha meraz lechinas din kidur, hainu kishubal adam lechinas din, bechinas nefila mavidasai, betoru tefila, and that causes him to fall from Torah and Tefillah. And through that, he now does tshuva, and he checks what he does, and he starts to fix it. And through that, he now becomes a zachar. He now, by raising the chesed out of the dinim, he actually now becomes a zachar. Not that a male is always chesed, but there are women are much more chasadim and much more rachmanis than men. But the concept, when a person does chesed, man or female, he's called a zachar, because a zachar is mashpia. So a zachar is giving, chesed is giving. And that's also gematria bracha, bechinas chesed. V'achakach v'toma shivas yaman. Hainish acha kol anal, noifel mimadras, b'miadrigosa, b'midosa, bechinas shev midah, shalai nikor shivas yam kidur. Which means that he has to sort of, in a way, start all over again. Why? So the Bas Ayin says the Torah is giving us a very practical example. A nida, when she becomes a nida, she now is also to her husband. So in a way that looks very bad. She can't live with her husband anymore. She can't touch her husband in a way that's a tzara. So the Bas Ayin says that no, on the contrary, that is kedei l'chavav al baila. One of the great things that Hashem did was there's a break. There's a required break for 2 weeks, or whatever it comes out to be, especially if she has a child, it could be a little longer. So on a practical level, a person could say that's terrible, right? Which is like a tzara. It's a different type of tzara, but it's an allusion to a bad situation. Now, a person who has the right hashkafa understands that the Torah, you know why the Torah did it? Kedei l'chavav al baila. Pirush gam bechinas nefila zu, hashniya bechinas shivas yom. This nefila is a big concept of the Sheva Midos, of the Sirus, who gam ken kebechinas tumas nida, kedei l'chavav al baila, which eventually, when she now becomes tar, right, she's now maila the chesed, and she now becomes tar, it now actually makes the relationship even better. The madrega gidoyli yosa, which is a reference when a person falls and he works on himself, it actually makes the ultimate outcome even better. And that's alluded to the idea when an isha, when she becomes nida, when she has a zohar, and instead of being happy, now she's also to her husband, you could look at it in a tzaradik way. When the right outlook is after she becomes tar, she will now be even more mechaviv by her baila, and will make her relationship even better. So too says the Bas Ayin, when a person has a tzara, one of the things that he has to do besides to daven, he has to understand, as the Baal Shem Tov taught, that in the tzara is the Yeshua, in the tzara is the chesed, and part of the avoid is to take the chesed out by understanding that it's all from Hashem, and to make us better. How? By mimefashresh amaisim, and understand that Hashem is giving us an opportunity to do tshuva, and through that we're maila the chesed, and ultimately the chesed overcomes the gvura, overcomes the din, and through that we're zoichet to have Yeshua. And as we said in the beginning, may the learning, we should continue to learn from the Sefer, we should continue to have Yeshua's, Nechamos, and get the in Yonim good besuras toivus advias goel tzedek. Amen.